Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Kamen Rider Faiz. It's a season that I think is pretty good. It has a lot of potential, but it ultimately doesn't live fully up to that, but at the end of the day it's still a pretty solid season. So without further ado, this is my thoughts on Kamen Rider Faiz. So when I first saw Kamen Rider Faiz, it was the fourth ever season of Kamen Rider I'd ever seen, so I didn't really have much to base it off of. But it was my least favorite at that time, and when I started to see other seasons, I kind of only remembered the things I didn't like about this season, especially the ending with Kiba. That really annoyed me to no end. So for a while, this was one of my least favorite seasons. I couldn't really put my finger on why I didn't like it. So after a rewatch, Kamen Rider Faiz is a pretty good season. I feel like it could have been a top 10 season, but it ends up just being a middle of the road season. I think that might be because of the characters. There's certainly way too many of them, and I feel like especially with Kiba, he has a lot of potential, but it just isn't done to its fullest. And there's some interesting things with the Orphanok and stuff like that, but it's just not done as well as it could have. But it's still like not terrible, so it just ends up being a pretty good season. So first I'm going to talk about the characters. Takumi is a pretty good main rider. I just like that he's different than what we get these days, where he's a reluctant hero and more of a loner. He's kind of unlikable at first, but eventually becomes a good character. And I just like his sarcastic attitude, and he has some funny moments. But I feel like he's just done dirty in this season, where he has the least to do, even though he's the main character. He doesn't have much to do within the plots of the episodes besides having to fight the Orphanok. And it just sucks because I really like his character. Kusaka is my favorite character in this season, just because he's a secondary rider that's truly a bad person and never really meant to be sympathized with. And he isn't ever redeemed. He gets what he asked for by getting killed by the Orphanok. And I just feel like they couldn't make this character today. If he was made today, it would probably just be like Kamen Rider Vulcan, where he hates Orphanoks in the beginning, but eventually learns to understand them and not hate them or whatever. So I'm just glad they didn't do that. But outside of that, he's still a bad person. He's really mean to Takumi for no reason. I guess just because he thinks he's a threat to Mari. He's a creep to Mari. And he also turns Takumi and Kiba against each other. And that's just so frustrating why either of them would trust him, even though he was an asshole to both of them. I feel like the worst part is that every time he comes back, they try to retcon his character and make him friends with Takumi, even though he says in the show that even though he and Takumi fight together, they're not friends. And I kind of understand why they have to do this, because they probably don't want to have a bad guy as a writer. That's understandable, but I just don't like it that they want to retcon his character. It's especially bad in Kamen Rider Tyson. But in the show itself, I'm glad he's pretty much evil all the way through, and he's not redeemed. Kiba is the character with the most potential, but doesn't exactly live up to that. I just like the idea that he becomes an Orphanok and then wants to still live as a human, but then sees that humans won't accept him and then wants to live as an Orphanok and hate humans. I feel like it's done alright. I feel like more bad could have done to him, because outside of the first episode where like his uncle sells his house and his girlfriend left him, nothing bad really happens to him with humans, aside from Kusaka lying to him and then Yuka getting killed by the police. So him turning to Smart Brain and becoming the president just seems kind of excessive. I feel like he could go on a crusade against humanity without joining Smart Brain, because they wanted to kill him the entire season. So it doesn't really make any sense why he would join them. And I feel like if more bad things happened to him, then it would make a little bit more sense. But I just like that idea, because most of the time you would have a character like this who would just become an Orphanok and want to live as a human and continue to want to live as a human. But I'm glad that even though he tried and it didn't work, he changed directions. So I just like that. There are a bunch of other characters in this season, and frankly there are too many. That might be why Takumi has like no focus at all, because of all these characters. Yuka and Mari are fine characters, but Keitaro and Kaido should have just been one character. Keitaro is just a generic altruistic guy who would be the protagonist if this was a modern season, and Kaido is just annoying. And outside of his introductory episodes with him about his passion for guitar, he's not that interesting and doesn't really do anything, and he's just annoying. And then all the Ryusei kids are just bad. They kind of just show up to die by the Orphanox. They do have an interesting thing with them having like Orphanox cells in them, but nothing's done with that in this season. I don't even think it's even mentioned how Kusaka can use the Kaiser belt while none of the other ones can, even though they all had the same procedure done on them. And Mihara is just the worst tertiary rider. He just shows no reason why he should be Delta, and I honestly forgot about him. The police characters are also barely worth mentioning. They serve pretty much no purpose to the plot and just disappear for really long stretches. And really the only time they get interesting is when the guy who experiments in Orphanox shows up near the end, and we don't even learn his name. I feel like if he was around the entire season, it would give Kiba a more realistic reason for turning against humans. But as it is now, he kind of just shows up for 3 episodes and then it's killed by Kiva. And I feel like as a whole, all the other police characters should have just been cut. The Orphanox aren't that good of villains. I just think it comes down to them not really being explained or why they hate humans. It said in the show that they're the next evolution of humanity, but that's just a bunch of nonsense. I don't actually know what that means. It doesn't really give a reason for why they hate humans. But I do like that they're an evil corporation, like Shocker. And I just like the parallels between seasons and seeing that they created the rider gears and the riders use them to fight them. So that's just cool. And I also like that the Lucky Clover are used throughout the season. Because I feel like in a lot of seasons, these would just be glorified much of the week, but they're actually the main villains, so that's cool. But as for the Lucky Clover, it just sucks that Jay was the one who had to die the first. He's just the best villain in this entire show. And I feel like he has an interesting power with him having multiple lives, but it's pretty much wasted in like 3 episodes. So what's even the point of him coming back? He was just going to die so fast. But other than that, they're just kind of generic. Another stupid thing about the villains is that Kitsuzaki just gives up the Delta gear for no reason. That's just the stupidest thing about this season. I feel like giving Delta to one of the Lucky Clover members, preferably Murakami, would have been cool because the rider gear was meant for Orphanox. So I feel like it would make sense for at least one of them to still be with them. But it's just stupid how it just ends up with Mihara, even though he's the least deserving of it. The way episodes are structured in this season is kind of weird. I feel like for the first 30 episodes, they feel a lot like Hibiki, where it focuses on the characters' daily lives, and Takumi has like nothing to do with that, so he kind of just has to fight the Orphanox and has nothing else to do. And there's just a lot of stupid subplots. Like there's a love triangle between Kaido, Yuka, Mari, and Keitaro, and it literally leads to nothing, so I don't even know why it was such a big deal. And then once Takumi is revealed to be an Orphanox, kind of all these daily life stories kind of just get forgotten, and it focuses on the main fight between Orphanox and humans. There are also some really annoying points, like Kiba and Takumi getting into misunderstandings or not talking to each other, and that's the reason why they fight in the beginning of the season. And then once they do make up, Kusaka comes in and lies to them, and for some reason they believe him. I guess Kiba had no real reason to not believe him because he wasn't an asshole to him yet, but Takumi believes him for some reason, even though he was a huge asshole to him. And it's just so annoying that they, even after that, they just fight each other. And this is a problem with a lot of other seasons, Kiva, and a little bit of Agito, but it's just so annoying when this happens. Like, they can just talk and it's resolved. And then the only other weird thing is the ending, where it leaves a hanging thread with Sayako and the Orphanox King surviving, which is just a really weird decision because it's never going to get resolved, because each season is a new story. And even in the 20th years after movie, this isn't even mentioned, so I don't understand why this was even the ending. But I am glad that Takumi's fate was left ambiguous. Now I'm going to briefly talk about the movies, and Paradise Lost is terrible. I wouldn't recommend watching it at all. It's one of my least favorite tokusatsu movies. Probably it's this or Tenno O's All Riders for my least favorite tokusatsu movie. I just don't really remember anything from this movie, and I saw this like 3 days ago, and it's just terrible. The 20th Year After movie is very good. I would say it's the best Kamen Rider movie since It's 10 Years Later. It's not a really good continuation or epilogue of the story of Faiz, but as a standalone story, it's pretty good. I won't really go into details because it came out a couple months ago. Yeah, it's just good action. It's a good movie. I was kind of worried that they were going to make Kusaka just like Takumi, but they at least gave a reason for it in this movie, and I really like that. And then there's just some really weird decisions, like it's really graphic for a tokusatsu movie, and there's orphanox sex for whatever reason. So that's weird, but other than that, it's a pretty good movie. The aesthetics for the season are really good. I just like the suits. They have this futuristic vibe to them. And just the belts in general are really cool. I just like the separate parts with the phone. And I just like that every single time they have to transform, they have to take the belt out of the briefcase and put it on manually. That's just really cool. And then the suits themselves, Faiz is pretty cool. I just like the way the piping on his suit lights up in the dark. There's not many times where it's shown, but when it is, it looks really cool. And Blaster Faiz is just probably the worst final form. It's pretty much just a palette swap with a jetpack. And it's debuted really late into the season, and it's only used like 4 or 5 times, so it's just not good. Kaizo has a pretty good suit. Delta's also pretty cool too. And the music is a pretty mixed bag. The instrumental tracks are good, as always, and the opening theme is really good. And then The People with No Name is a good insert theme, but the other 2 insert themes aren't that great. So in conclusion, Kamen Rider Faiz is a pretty good season. It probably should have been a top 10 season, but it ends up falling short of that pretty significantly. But it's still not bad. It's certainly better than Kamen Rider Ghost. I just like Takumi, I like Kusaka. I like the idea of Kiba, but there's just way too many characters. I like the aesthetics. It's just a pretty good season. It's a little bit different than other seasons, but that's a reason to check it out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry if this video took longer to come out. It took me longer than I expected to finish Faiz. My next video should be on my favorite Kamen Rider suits. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feedback is always appreciated. Have a great day.